welcome to the Uphill Athlete Podcast. I'll be your host today. My name is Alyssa Clark, if you've forgotten at any point. But I am stoked to bring you someone that I think really came on everyone's radar last year, but has been in the climbing world actually for only 4.5 years, which is incredibly shocking considering all that you've done. But I have Tanner Wanish. I should have asked you about that before. Wanish?
Wanish.
Wow, the third choice.
No, I get that all the time. It's okay.
Tanner Wanish on with me. He has, as I said, been climbing for 4.5 years. He's a former Navy SEAL. He also runs or is on the board for Crux Wilderness Therapy, which I'd also love to ask you more about. But probably what he's most known for is breaking some guy named Alex Handheld, someone like that, his record on the Yosemite Triple Crown, and you came in at 17 hours and 55 minutes. You've also done Naiad in 9 hours, and then decided that that wasn't enough, that you were going to do the quadruple, adding in Washington Column and completing that in 20 hours and 50 minutes. So the triple is, well, I guess I'll just let you get into it. But Tanner, thanks for being on. I don't know why I just thought of asking you to be on the last few days, but I was like, oh my gosh, wow, slam dunk, like easy day. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm happy to connect here. I've been listening to the podcast for a while, so it's cool to come on and get a chance to just yap for a bit.
Love a good yap. That was one of the best, I feel like, discoveries. My friend told me about yapping. I was like, yapping is the best.
It's great. Yeah, I could yap all day. I do it all the time. I'm pretty good at it too.
That's awesome. So I'd love to, I'm sure you've gone over this a little bit, but just a little bit about your background of, how you got into sports, where you grew up, and then also what led you into wanting to be a SEAL would be awesome.
Sure. Yeah. I grew up in South Carolina, not outdoor inclined in any way whatsoever. I went to the Citadel. It's a military college in South Carolina. I was like one hair under a court order from going to the Citadel. I was like the definition of troubled youth coming out of high school. I was a bit out of control. And it was kind of a forced decision to go there, and it ended up being like the best thing that ever happened to me. It gave me a good sense of discipline, and I needed some rigidity and some structure and like a set of rules, and I needed some good strong male figures to tell me what to do at the time, which I definitely got that. So I at the end of college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I worked at State Farm the summer after my junior year for the whole summer, because that's what my grandpa did, and he was very successful. And I it's just like what you do. It's like, well, this is what the guy in my family did. He's doing well. I'm going to go do that. And one summer, doing that told me immediately, this is not what I want to do. I don't think I'm cut out for a desk job for a variety of reasons. It's not going to be a mutually beneficial situation for me or the people in the office. So I went to when I went back for my senior year, two of my best buddies at the Citadel, Danny and Jay, got special forces contracts to go into the Army. There was like a big dream of theirs to go into the special forces and be Green Berets, and they kind of flippantly threw out like, hey, you should look at this SEAL route. I didn't know anything about the SEAL teams. I had never met a SEAL. I didn't even know what they did. I grew up swimming my whole life. I was pretty good as the thing I was probably the best at going into college was swimming, like sports wise. I wrestled as well, but I was definitely better at swimming. So I had a pretty good water background, and it just seemed like this kind of like brutish fit where it was like, you're good in water. Why don't you go do this water thing? And I did like very brief research on it. And, I saw guys jumping out of planes and shooting guns and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that looks better than State Farm. Sure. And just completely like on a whim went into the recruiter's office and ended up dropping a packet, and I auto qualified for a bud slot, which if you have high enough scores across the board, like a cumulative highest score, you just auto qualify. You get a contract within 48 hours, and you just get the next ship date that you want. So like in retrospect, it's almost embarrassing to say I didn't have like these grand lifelong dreams of like I need to embody honor and commitment and go like serve my country. Honestly, I just didn't know what else to do. It seemed like a really cool opportunity to test myself, and it seemed like an opportunity to prove that I was worth uh, being counted on by others. It's an opportunity to prove that you are somebody that people can look to in a time of like adversity or crisis or something. It just seemed like a really cool opportunity to kind of, test your mettle and see like, are you one of these guys or are you the rest? And statistically, you're going to be the rest. The 95% that don't make it. But I don't know. Everything it worked out reasonably well, all things considered. Obviously, there's like a million ways that could have gone horrifically bad. Yeah, it worked out well, and I shipped out right after college and did about 9 years in the Navy.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay. That's, yeah, quite a bit of time.
6.5 in the SEAL teams or so, just because how long the training pipeline is. It just takes a while to get there. So yeah, that was the general route to the Navy, and then I separated in December of 2022. So I just got out, just past 2 years now.
Wow. Do you feel that, I've actually never really heard, and I should say this, I think I've said this before, my husband's in the Navy, spent a lot of time training people and working. I've actually trained some special forces people, and I've never heard it described as like being that person that people can count on as wanting to be a part of the team. How do you see that translate to being a rope partner or being on the wall? Like, do you feel a similar kind of that sense of partnership and such? Because it seems like to me like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense because that's such an intimate relationship.
Yeah, no, for sure. I want to like every day I go out to climb with somebody, I want to be the best partner I can. I want to, understand. Ideally, we've got shared objectives in mind on the kind of day we're trying to have. Whether that's, hey, we're going to go project, we're going to climb really hard today, and we're not going to stop until we're totally trashed, or we want to do a big volume day, and we're going to climb until we're totally trashed, but it's going to be a volume, and we're going to do 40 pitches instead of like working the same one route all day. And um, I want to have that good attitude. I want to make the team, a stronger team. I just want to add to the partnership, in every way I can and not take away. I don't want to be complaining. You'll never in a million years see me show up late to go climb. That is like my biggest pet peeve in the world. And it's super common. It drives me nuts, but like, I'm not going to be late. I'm not going to hike slow. I'm not going to forget gear. Like I want to treat this like we're, out there working to be a little better. And obviously there's days where we're like, hey, we're just going to go crag and we're going to have fun. And it's not a serious day. This is like a totally type 1 day. And that's a different scenario. But if I'm going to go out for any sort of like actual objective that day, with a partner, I want to be the best partner I can. I want to be somebody that people, when they think of a big objective, they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to call Tanner to see if he wants to do that because I know that he's going to show up prepared with a good attitude and lots of stoke, and he's going to maximize our chances for succeeding at whatever we're going to go do that day. So I just think that's like, it's the least I can do as a partner. And honestly, that's what I'm looking for in partners as well, as people that kind of embody those same values and stuff that, our time is valuable. I don't get to climb as much as I want. I would like to climb every day, and anything less than that is going to be less than I want. So like, if you show up 30 minutes late, like I'm probably going to be a little antsy when you get there and be like, okay, well, we just missed like already a pitch or two. And, if you halfway through the day, you're like, oh, I just remembered I got to let my dog out. Like, okay, well, we just lost 5 or 6 more pitches. And I can also be like, I totally acknowledge this. I can be a little bit intense in the mountains. There's two Tanners for sure. And it's going to depend on what day we're looking to have. Like I said, whether it's like, hey, we're going to go crag with a group of 10 people and we're just going to have fun, or, hey, we're going to go do Whitney. We're going to go do Whitney lap, and we're going to try to do it in under 6 hours car to car or something. Those are night and day different Tanners. And like on the second one, it's kind of business. And like,
Yeah.
I want to like push hard and train. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine. I'll go by myself. But a lot of times that like miscommunication or maybe misunderstanding on like we thought we had the same idea in mind, but we don't, has definitely resulted in a few burned partnerships and stuff. Not in a personal bad way, but just like, hey,
Right. Yeah.
maybe we're not the best in the mountains together. So yeah, and I just think it's important to communicate that beforehand on what kind of day you're looking to have. So
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, I do the exact same thing with my running, and actually had I work with a mental performance coach, and he put it really well of like, there's runs that are meant to be shared with friends and family and are just for fun, and then there's runs that's like, that's mine, that's my training, and like I am not willing to budge on what needs to happen that day. And that differentiation, I feel like, really helped me to, I also, I mean, you can ask my husband Cody, I am like so antsy if I'm not getting my workout done the way that I want to, the way it was
yeah,
written, and on time. So I feel you
yeah,
on that.
I get pretty stubborn on that. I will like routinely, I mean, I would say at least 50% of the time, I'll just say before we step off, like, hey, when we get to the top, I'm gonna run down, I'm gonna run 14 miles to the car, and you can come with me or I'll meet you at the car. But like, I'm not, I'm not budging on that. I'm just letting you know that's what I'm going to do. Or if we're on the way up and it's like this, you're immediately not keeping up for whatever reason. You're not having a good day or you're not fit enough or whatever. I'm just like, there are days where I'm just like, hey, I'll see you back at the car. I'm going to go. Cause like you said, like these training days are really important for me. And, yeah, I just feel like I hate feeling like I left stuff on the table that day. I like to use up I like to use up my days well. And, um, I can't like it costs something to go into the mountains every day and go do these like big mileage or big volumes or intensity days. And any of those that are wasted, I just don't see the reason why I would waste them. Why wouldn't I just say like, okay, I'll see you in 2 hours because you're not moving fast enough. I don't know. I know that's totally controversial. I totally get that.
I,
I just really value my time. That's Tanner time, and like we said, there is definitely other time where it's like, hey, this is a social day. We're gonna hike as a group and we're gonna chat. Maybe it's more of a mental health day. We're just gonna talk and shoot the shit and kind of get into the weeds for a couple hours, and those are just as important. I totally acknowledge like those are very important, but that needs to be kind of maybe designated beforehand. I don't want to go out on like a day that I want to push hard and then end up being like, man, I'm like, I have a ton left in the tank at the end of the day because I feel like I just like wasted, an opportunity to get a little bit better. So
absolutely. I mean, yeah, you're you're not controversial to me, because I always say, like, if someone is pacing me, or we're going out on a run, and believe me, I love people, I love community, all of that, but I'll say like, hey, I love you, but I'm not going to stay with you. Like, if you're not keeping up, I am dropping you, sorry. Like,
yeah,
like
uh,
today's not the day, this race, not the race. Like, I
I would
love
say
you so much.
yeah.
What's
Most
up?
of my partners have experienced that. Probably, I don't know if anybody I've ever had big days with has not experienced that at least once. Where I'm like, hey, love you, man. I'll see you back in the car. I gotta go. So, and it's not
Yeah,
toxic at all. Like
it's not.
days where I've been on the other side. I've had days where I'm like, I had a day. I went out with Vitali actually. We were just talking about him where we went out and did like a spur of the moment Cirque of the Towers traverse, and 2/3 of the way through, I was like, dude, I feel fucking terrible. Like I am dying right now. I don't know if it was a nutrition issue or some just what for whatever reason I wasn't performing, and he was obviously doing well. And I was like, hey, you go ahead. I'm gonna cut out this shoot. I'll meet you back at the car because I don't want to hold him up. I know that he's like
Yeah.
feeling strong and he wants to have that day. I don't want to be the guy that's making you wait on me. I know what that's like. It drives me insane. So like for God's sake, you go ahead and like have the day that you want to have. And it's like, hurting my feelings. It's going to hurt my feelings way more if I'm like the anchor that's ruining your day that you're trying to have. So I totally get it. There's no problem with being on either side. I just think I wish it was a bit less personal of it. It shouldn't be like a
Yeah.
personal thing. It should just be like, hey, for whatever reason, we're not connecting today. So we're going to connect in an hour at the car. So
Yeah, I would say that in the running world, that is much more acceptable. I would guess in the rock climbing world, that there's much more of that, like, hey, we're just out here like having fun, that you
Yeah.
probably get more pushback. Yeah,
A little bit, yeah. And also, like, it depends on if we're, are we in technical terrain and stuff? Like, Vitaly and I soloed most of that, but like, we're soloing it with the assumption that if we got into a situation, we have each other there in like a small rope that we can belay each other through. So I don't have the opportunity to just cut out randomly because I would have cratered the entire day. So I waited until we were done with the technical climbing to then cut out because, it's if you're doing technical stuff where you're at risk, like,
totally.
I don't want to leave him 20 miles deep in the mountains with no radio and no way to get in contact with anybody. And now he's by himself when he thought he was with a partner. So there's just considerations like that too. And yeah, it's a little more nuanced, I think, but just the idea of like making sure you're kind of on the same page with the day you're trying to have.
Absolutely. And that there's kind of two pieces that I want to touch on today. One of which is thinking about, well, I guess you brought up this term, we were chatting a little bit before, but big alpine slash climbing endurance events. So, you're talking like 15 plus hours out, moving through the dark, through the light, on the wall, running, etc. How are you thinking about your training for these events? Like, how are you differentiating the technical aspects of the climbing and also making sure, you do have the endurance to go for that long?
Yeah. Yeah. I
A
don't know.
huge question, just a small question.
We've been trying to like figure out a good term for this weirdly like hyper niche style of climbing that we're doing. We've just been calling it technical enduro. Like the quad where you're doing this like gigantic, you're in like technical terrain for 20 hours or something like that. And a lot of these big traverses are kind of they're like, I mean, I don't know. Not honestly, they're not that similar. They're like you're in technical terrain where like you're definitely in no fall zones for a large portion of the day, but it's obviously different than being 30 pitches up El Cap or
Totally.
something. Um, but there a lot of this stuff. So I mean, I think first and foremost, you need to be able to climb. You need to be able to climb everything that you're looking at climbing. Like 100% confidently would be the absolute like primary check mark. If you can't climb everything confidently, you don't have any business in like adding 17 hours of that. Like it just you kind of needs to be almost second nature the stuff that you're doing. So when you're going out and doing Grand Traverse in a day or Evolution Traverse in a day or Circle of the Towers or like whatever, that climbing needs to feel like scrambling. If you're up there and you're like, obviously this is all my opinion, I'm sure that there are other ways to do this, but in my opinion, it needs to be you need to be so comfortable doing it's not a consideration. Because when you're on hour 18 on technical terrain, if you're not comfortable, that's like that's a serious safety hazard. You're going to
Oh
end up
yeah.
grinding complete halt. Like the wheels are going to fall off dramatically if you're not super super comfortable when you start. 20 hours in, you're going to be you're just not going to make it that far. There's no way. So I think that's the primary thing, making sure that you're super comfortable on either the grade that you're climbing or like the specific terrain, whether that's super exposed ridge climbing or if it's speed climbing on El Cap or something like that. Just understanding that this is well below your pay grade in terms of technical difficulty. So I think that's the first thing. I think I don't know what I would put second, either the mental head game or the physical fitness. I think they're both like equally important, because if your head's not right, obviously, to do this stuff, you just won't make it past you won't make it past the first peak. Because there's definitely days that we've gone out to go speed climb, and I think speed climbing is like objectively probably the riskiest thing I've done like in my adult life. Probably it's like it is just inundated with so much potential hazard, and it's all like one tiny mistake away, and your subconscious is very aware of that. Like this, if you make like one small mistake, it could be fatal or it could be life changing, and we've seen that happen with professional climbers in the past. It's a very very real reality that's like it's tangible at all times. It's you will not forget that. So I've had days where we've gone out to speed climb and I'm like, dude, I just don't have the gumption to go do these 100-foot runouts today. Like for whatever reason, I didn't sleep good last night, or maybe I had an experience recently that rattled me and I need to get my head back. But there's days where I've just been like, I'm not feeling as bold as I need to be today to do what we're looking to do. And then on, congruently, same with the big soloing days in the mountains. Cause if you are going to do a lot of these bigger days, Grand Traverse again, like stuff like that, you're going to have to solo almost the entire majority, if not the entire thing, to do that in a day in any sort of like remarkable time. It's just the reality of covering that much ground. It's just
Yeah.
not physically possible to do it while you're like roping up and pitching out. So I've had plenty of days where I've gone out to, by myself into the mountains, and I've gone up to, I had a day 2 years ago or something where I hiked up and I was just going to solo the East Buttress of Whitney, which I've done several times. And like, for no reason in particular, I just was like, I just don't really want to do this today. Like, I know that there's this little bit of an exposed section up at the top above the Pee-wee where you have like 1,000 feet of air under you, and it's like 5-6 climbing. It feels pretty secure, but like, I was thinking about that, and I had trail runners on, and that was my plan to go do this. And I just was like, I don't want to experience that situation today where I have to like confront this fear, put it back in the box, and then kind of like deal with it. So I just went up the Mountaineers route, and it was a great day, and it was totally fine. And maybe I was just in my head, maybe everything would have been fine and it would have been a totally fine scenario, but I want to be like really attuned to that little voice in my head that says, hey, maybe today's not the best day to do that. And I listen to that 10 out of 10 times. Like, I don't have days where I'm like, oh, I have to solo this or I'm going to like lose everything, So I want to keep that back door like very readily cordoned off and accessible at all times, to be like, oh, I don't want to take this risk today, because it is a lot of risk. That's the reality. Is like, you can downplay it all you want and say that this is well below your grade, but you are one mistake away from likely a life-changing scenario. And that shouldn't be shied away from. You should acknowledge that and kind of confront that scenario, and then you can choose to go anyway, but you shouldn't ignore that. I don't think that's a good way to approach that. So I think that, obviously that's like the second thing, is like making sure your head is right for these big technical enduro days where you're going to be taking more risk than you normally would. And then obviously the fitness, like, can you physically do it? Can you physically climb for 22 hours? Can you physically climb 4 walls in a day? Like, have you ever climbed 80 pitches in a day? Like, it's gonna hurt. Like, you're gonna start cramping up in really weird places. It's gonna be very odd. So that's, but like, all three of those things are like immediate deal breakers. If your head's not right, you can't even start. If you physically can't do it, you can't even start. Like, they're all like top tier important things, because I feel like a lot of stuff goes into these. They're just like these high demand, like kind of involved days where they just require like this really cumulative toolbox of fitness and headspace and technical skills. And that's what I love so much about it, is like, it, I could have gone and climbed El Cap a year into climbing. If I can climb 5'9" and you can pull on gear, you can climb the nose. Realistically, if you can pull on cams and you can climb 5'9", you can go do the nose tomorrow. But you're probably not going to do it in 5 hours and then do 3 more walls. That's going to be something that happens years down the road after you've built that really good fitness base and volume and intensity. And I can do these 5'11" moves when I'm 68 pitches in, because if I can't do that move, now I have to aid this pitch. And now this pitch is going to take me an hour instead of 5 minutes. So like, it's just this really cool, comprehensive, cumulative, like, I've put in all of this work across the board in all these categories, and this is the prize right here, is like these really big technical days. So sorry, that's a lot of yapping right there, but
No, that was amazing. I mean, I guess I really just want to highlight the fact that you said that there are some days where it's just not the right time to do it, and I listen to that, because I feel like the reputation that elite climbers, athletes get is that we don't have that. We just go all the time. We like never kind of back off. And that is not the case.
no.
And I think, and I love that you pointed that out and said, like, yeah, I really listen to that voice 10 out of 10 times. I listen, because that's what keeps us alive, first off. And it's also just, it's very humanizing, where it's like, no, we're not just hardos. all the time pushing to the absolute limits. There are days for that, and there are days where it's like, yeah, I'm just not in the space for that right now, and that's equally important.
Yeah, yeah.
So
We just
so
talked
thanks for
about,
saying that. Yeah.
yeah, of course. Like, we kind of just touched on the burnout stuff before we started recording, but there, just to go back to your point on like backing off on that, I don't want to butcher this. I think this was Leo Holding. I don't know for sure. I could be totally wrong about this, so I hope somebody corrects me if I am. I think he said, in terms of base jumping, he's like, really big into the base jumping scene. And somebody, it might be Leo, said, I want to be known as the guy who walked away from the most base jumps ever. Because he's like, it's about walking up and like, if there's an ounce of me that says today's not the day to take this risk, no questions asked, pack your shit up, hike down the backside. And you have nothing to lose from that. Like, you got a great day in outside, and like, you're 100% not going to die that day base jumping. Whereas,
Yeah.
like, if maybe you had, but like, I want to have a similar mentality with specifically these like high risk days where like if I'm not feeling like I'm capable of like shouldering the load of risk that day, I'm not going to do it, because that's when mistakes get made, because now I'm not thinking clearly, and maybe I'm forcing stuff, and if I'm forcing stuff, I'm not listening to that little voice in my head, and like I'm not flowing, I'm not organic, and like, the more like, it's counterintuitive, but like, I don't want to be thinking out there while I'm doing stuff. I need stuff to be happening kind of automatically. And yeah, I just, there are days to like push through that, obviously, and that's very valuable, to have days where like, man, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I don't think that high risk objectives are the time to do that, though. I think that's the time where you need to be your most willing to back off and say, for whatever reason, this doesn't feel right, and maybe I can't articulate exactly why, but this is always going to be here. I'll do this next week. I'll do this next month. Like, I don't need to take this risk today specifically. Maybe I'll just go run, or I'll go, do a bunch of top rope solo laps or something like that. But I think that's an important part of being, not having ego involved, not being stressed about like, what are people going to think, or who did I tell I was going to do this? Like, it doesn't matter. This is your longevity in the sport. And I think that's, probably the most important part of the longevity, is being willing to like listen to those things that say like, maybe not today.
Yeah, and I think that when you really start knowing yourself, knowing your body and your mind, there's a difference between, oh, this is hard, and I don't know, maybe I'm tired or I'm working really hard, versus I don't feel okay about this situation. Like, something is wrong. Like, I think sometimes people think like, oh, well, you just don't want to train hard, or you're tired, or whatever. It's like, no, it's not really that. Like, there's some force that's speaking, that's saying like, today is just not the day for this to happen. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, a very different voice than like, hey, I've been grinding and this is really hard, but like, I need to push through. I can do that.
Yeah. Totally different scenarios. And like I said, there's great value in like hitting that wall and pushing through it on those days that like that you can afford to. But yeah, I think that it's important to be able to recognize that. I had a lot of trouble for a couple years with overtraining, like really, really badly overtraining myself into these like chronic injuries like that I'm still dealing with today. Like, I terrible back problems still, and like shoulder problems and knee problems. I've had knee surgeries and like torn labrums and stuff. And it's because I would refuse to acknowledge that reality for quite a while of hey, maybe today's not the day to just completely bury myself. And I would respond by being like, oh, you're being a little bitch. We're gonna double down now. I'd hear that like inner monologue of like, hey, today's not the day to really just, you know, crush yourself. And I would respond by being like, oh, I need to bury that voice so deep. So I'm gonna do even more than I was going to. And I was destroying myself. It was so counterproductive, like really hard, like self-harmful stuff like that. And now I've gotten a lot better at recognizing, the difference between the reality of like, hey, you just physically don't have that much to give today, or you physically can't shoulder this mental burden of like the risk that you're looking to take, versus maybe you are just being a weenie today, and like you do need to just push hard. Like maybe you are just tired. Like train anyway. So I'm trying to get better. I'm still working on that, but we're trying to differentiate a little more accurately now.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, to in all fairness to you, I mean, your background is literally like the counterintuitive to that thought. Your background with seals, etc., is just like, yeah, you go. It doesn't matter. Like feelings are not
No matter
a
what,
part
yeah.
of this equation. Yeah.
Yeah, you
So
can't be
like
like, I'm not. Yeah,
you're not really feeling it today. Yeah, it's not really. So I'll give you credit for that. Like that's kind of been ingrained in you for a while. So good on you that you're kind of trying to break away from that. But I'm curious how your training breaks down when you're doing something like the triple, of how much of it is kind of that endurance piece of running, hiking, and how much of it is, getting on the wall and climbing. Like how do you think about that in your training?
yeah. So it's obviously going to vary pretty dramatically from objective to objective.
Right.
So for like the triple and the quad specifically this year, Mike and I met up like 2 months prior to the triple. Our Yosemite season is kind of broken up into two parts. We had Tuolumne and then the valley. Tuolumne was until the valley got cool enough, and the thought was as soon as the valley is cool enough to climb on the south facing walls, we'll immediately go to Yosemite. We'll drop everything. Um, so while we were in Tuolumne, the one of our kind of back of the mind objectives was the Backer Urian. So we were kind of trying to figure out, it's this like big mental test piece in Tuolumne. It's this really, really incredible route, but it's like very, very run out. It's like a pretty serious ordeal. Something that if you were capable of doing it one time, you probably just do it one time and probably never again.
Gotcha.
So we were kind of like, our goal was to have we were doing 2 on 1 off, and ideally we would do, the first day would be an intensity day where we're chasing grades. We're trying to climb at least 512 every day, work on like actually sending pitches, kind of like, more power and intensity, and that like specific contact power of being able to like do hard moves. And then the second day we would do these like really kind of hilarious volume days where we would just try to climb like 3 or 4 multi-pitch routes in a day, just until it was dark. We just climb until we're completely trashed. And the idea is you always want to go into a rest day just like completely demolished, and then the rest day is just spent doing R&R and like skin care. Basically we just lay in bed and eat and do skin care and like stretch all day, which was awesome. And so we kind of had those two goals in mind, where we were kind of orienting toward the Backer Urian and then also working toward the triple in the background. So I'm like, I think this is kind of like, again, counterintuitive. I don't do much running like at all. I do a lot of uphill work. I just told you I got up at 4:30 today and did 2 hours on the treadmill uphill before this, and like I've been doing a bunch of ski touring in the mornings, like doing uphill laps at the resorts here and stuff before the sun comes up, and I really enjoy that. I don't do a ton of like pure running for like no reason. I don't really know why I don't. I keep saying I want to. I was really big into running. No, honestly, that's not true. I know why I don't do it, because I like totally shredded my ankle last year, 2 years ago.
Okay.
I had that like complete blowout. I was like super excited. I was kind of going down this more of an ultra running path in 2023, where I was like pretty excited. I actually got a sponsored slot from the Navy SEAL Foundation to do the Leadville 100, and I got accepted,
Oh,
and I was
cool.
super stoked. I was like, this is going to be this big life dream. I thought that was like the most badass race in the world. And then that summer, I just catastrophically blew out my ankle. I had a full grade 3 ATFL rupture and a bunch of grade 2s, like other ligaments. I was in a boot for a couple months, and then I did it again a couple months later. And basically like haven't done a ton of running since then, because I'm still scared my ankle's gonna fold. It's like, it feels like I'm like missing hardware in my ankle right now. I can feel like there's a lot of looseness and lack of tension. And so yeah, I ended up just switching over to doing like a lot of steep uphill stuff, and hiking uphill with weight and stuff like that, because I feel like I'm maybe a little less scared I'm gonna fold my ankle. I'm supposed to get that ankle surgery, the chronic ankle but it's a lateral ligament reconstruction where they cut
Oh,
all your
cool. Okay.
ligaments off. Yeah, they like
Ooh.
cut all your ligaments off and then they like ratchet them down and reattach them. Because my ankle's just like useless. It's like my wife on the couch a couple months ago, we were like late watching TV or something, and she grabbed my foot and like pulled it, and she subluxed my ankle like with her like just like accidentally pulled it out, and she was like, "Ah, what was that?" And I was like, "Why did you just do that?" And it like popped it back in, and I was like, "There's like no tension in my ankle at all." It's like really
Ugh.
frustrating. Yeah, I was supposed to get that surgery last year, and I kind of kicked the can down the road, and now I'm kind of just waiting for my ankle to fold again. And the compromise with the orthopedist was like, I was like, can I just wait for this to happen again and get surgery then? He's like, sure. He's like, it's not if, it's when. It's going to happen. But if you want to wait for it to go again, we'll just do surgery then. I was like, okay. So yeah. So I
Gotcha.
don't do a ton of running. Yeah.
How does for yeah, I mean, man, when you're like in the midst of everything, it's like I do not want to actively choose a time when I'm going to have to stop all of this and
Exactly.
do
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
wouldn't I should have my wisdom teeth out. Much smaller thing. And I keep being like, nah, maybe later.
I mean,
Um
no, it's a bummer though because I enjoy running. Like I really like it. I'm like really in my head about it now because I've
yeah.
this ankle is folded, I think 6 times now in the past like 3 years, and each time it goes, I'm in a boot for like 2 months. Like I can't crack climb for 3 months. It's like it's
Yeah.
catastrophic when it happens. It's like everything stops. I can't walk. I can't hike. I can't climb. Like the world stops. Um, and last time it happened was like right after we got out of the Navy and the VA healthcare wasn't set up yet. I was like in between insurances, so I didn't have a way to get the surgery right away, which is what I should have done. And then by the time everything got set up, I was like walking again, and I was like, well, what if I just wait for it to happen again? I don't want to take myself out now. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's like totally not the right way to do it. I should just get this done. I'm just like, well, I'm doing the stuff I'm doing right now, and it seems to be functioning okay. So, but no, I mean, I would like to run. Vitali and I did the rim to rim to rim,
Oh, nice. Okay.
this time, well, not this time, like in March of last year. And that was literally the only day I ran, I think, in all of 2024. That was the single only day I ran. And it was awesome. I loved it. It was like such a great time. And I was able to do that because the amount of time that we put in, hiking and just moving outside and stuff. But it probably would have been a lot more enjoyable to do with like a good running base. So
Yeah. No, that's, I mean, impressive that you did that without much of the running background. And that makes total sense that running is, yeah, you don't, you're like, well, I don't really know. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So when
yeah, I
you're
kind of
coming
forgot about
down, yeah, when you're coming down off of, El Cap, or, in kind of the in betweens, are you just really fast hiking? Are you jogging? Like how, also,
jogging.
guessing, okay.
Yeah. We're like
Yeah.
we're jogging all the downs and flats, and then we kind of power march the ups and stuff. Um, but I mean, those days are like that's just a long, slow burn. It's like what I would imagine. I haven't done a 100-mile race, obviously, but it's like what I would imagine something like that would maybe be a little similar to that, where like you're not in like zone 3, zone 4, like you're in
Yeah.
zone 1 or 2 for like 20 hours, and it's like there are definitely like when you're leading pitches, there are times where you're jacking that heart rate up like quite a lot. But then you're recovering while you're jugging, and like jogging down East Ledges or jogging off Watkins is like we're jogging, a 9 or 10 minute pace. Like we're not sprinting. It's it's not much more exertion than just hiking, I think. So my partner Mike he ran cross country for like forever in college and stuff. He's got a super good background of like a big strong base like this as well. So yeah, I think it's important to not not jack that heart rate up too much, and then obviously you bust for the entire day. So that's all part of the strategy is like burning the long slow wick.
Yeah. Do you think that one of the pieces of lowering that time could be like, hey, let's just kind of work on the running aspect, increase that? Or do you feel, is the percentage of that time that you're spending moving in between routes almost negligent compared to how much faster you can get the climbing piece?
Yeah. I think it's kind of negligent. If you're like, we made it
Gotcha.
down from the summit of El Cap in like 37
Oh
minutes.
wow. Okay, that's so much shorter. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're like, I could maybe get that down to like 28 or something, but like but then I would
Yeah.
show up and be like redlining and like not able to eat or something. Like I need to show up and as I walk up, I need to take in like 2 or 3,000 calories and then immediately set off for the death slabs up Half Dome, So it's like, I think for something like that, I think the time is going to drop from logistics over everything is like how confidently you can move on that terrain. And every single aid move you can cut out is gonna save you time. Every second that you cannot waste doing a gear turnover or re-racking or like whatever is gonna save you time. And it's gonna be kind of net as long as you're like not completely like just moseying around off of these summits and like approaches and stuff. I think it's going to be negligent kind of in the grand scheme for this specific like for like the triple quad specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. This is, I don't know why I thought this, but this is like my immediate thought was, when you're driving in between them, how much is the urge to be like, I gotta speed, like let's go, or you're like, well,
I wasn't actually driving, so we gotta. I got my wife picked us up, and then Quinn did the second time. But we start out by doing Watkins, and then we kind of jog from there. It's 3 miles to the road. So I think we got there in like 40 minutes or something like that. Like not, just kind of not. I mean, we need to show up like ready to eat, and then like ramp down.
totally.
So we got there and I mean, I think we said something like drive intentionally, but like you don't need to be like throwing the cabinets open in the back of the van, like shit flying out, like fridges falling out, like that's whether we get there 10 minutes earlier or 10 minutes later, like that's not going to make or break the day. But if we can eat as many calories as possible and then like try to get that systemic reset for like ramping down and kind of like closing our eyes and just getting that that whole systemically like I'm back to complete zone zero right now to like restart. I think that's way more important. So if you're in the back, that road's pretty windy. If you're in the back of the van throwing like rolling around like this, it's gonna be terrible. So yeah,
I have been back when we used to have a truck camper. I have been in the bed in the truck camper driving on those roads and was like, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna throw up everywhere and I'm gonna die. This is the worst thing ever. Yeah.
So, I know. We hand rides in the back sometimes, and we get on the roads. I'll see her crawling out of the bed in the dark and come out front because she's getting sick, getting thrown around back there.
It's rough. How are you? And again, you're really primed for this kind of thing with the sleep deprivation that I'm sure you had to, that I know you guys have to go through. But how are you dealing? Because again, like, sorry to keep using the trail running, that's just kind of my reference point, but like when I'm 20, 30 hours deep on a run, I'm just thinking about like, hey, don't fall on that cliff. Like you guys are actually on the cliff. So how are you dealing with that fatigue? Like, do you get sleepy on these? How do you keep your focus levels up? Because obviously there's just a lot more consequence. Like that's the part that's always intimidated me about doing really technical long things is like, okay, I know I can stay awake, but like, can I keep my focus? And
so that's definitely like a huge factor. So I got so lucky stumbling into this partnership with Michael Vale. He's like just like psychotically mentally resilient. He just loves suffering in this like really positive way. Just like I've never heard him complain. I mean, he's just like a bottomless source of like, motivation and stoic on these big days. So primarily, I think that's really important to have a partner who's like, obviously, there is nothing worse in the world when you're like starting to feel a little bit of the pain cave and then the person that you're with starts complaining and you're just like, shut the fuck up. Like, don't say another word. I'm going to leave you behind. It just immediately kills it. Like, it doesn't matter what you're feeling. Don't say it out loud. Cause like, like on a race day specifically, if you're like, this is our time to just, this is not the time to complain. This is the time to, this
Totally.
is when you do put it back in the box. We'll talk about how bad this was afterwards. Don't say that again. And like, Mike's really, really good about that. Honestly, I think a little like maybe less good. I don't know. I'm like pretty quick to, not pretty quick, but I definitely on the quad had like on I mean, we both had times where we were like, it wasn't complaining. It was like, it was saying, hey, I'm just letting you know as my partner, I'm not doing
Yeah.
too good right now. And it's not, both of us know we're not complaining. That's like, hey, I need a little bit of oversight right now because like we are on consequential terrain and like for whatever reason I'm bonking, you know, I'll immediately start taking calories and caffeine and like whatever I need to do. But for the immediate moment, and I'll update you when I'm out of this hole, but like I need you to keep an eye on me for a second here. And we both had, he had one of those on um Washington column. And I don't remember when mine, I mean, on the first one, mine was on El Cap. I was definitely a lot better on the quad. Um, but yeah, just being able to communicate that, I think is really important. But so on Washington column, for example, I I don't know why this just seems like an easy one. We repelled Washington column instead of doing the hike off. That
Okay.
was the third big wall that we did. We started it at 5 a.m. and we topped out at 7 a.m. or something like that, and then we were rappelling. And rappelling is statistically like where all
Oh
the
yeah.
accidents are going to happen. That's like, you know, 9 out of 10 accidents or fatalities will happen on the rappel. So we topped out Washington column, and then we were doing double rope wraps with a tagline on the whole way down. Um, just because the walk off is like, I hate that walk off more than anything. I don't know why. I absolutely despise that walk off. And I was like, I cannot do that walk off after three big walls and before a fourth. So it's like, let's repel this. And the safety was a big factor. We actually said, like, should we repel this? Because if we do the walk
Yeah.
off, it'll be miserable, but we're probably not going to die. Where the repelling, like, there's that, you're just opening up all these opportunities for mistakes. So when we got up there, we were, you know, at that point, we were, I don't know, 27 hours or 28 hours without sleep. And we were 18 hours into the day or something like that, 17 hours into the day. I don't know. And three big walls in. So we're like very fatigued at that point. And the wheels are like starting to come off and, you know, the calories are just not really replacing it. And we're really foggy. And, you know, like when that sun rises on the second day and you kind of feel a little drunk and you're like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
not like, just not like really as cognizant as I need to be right now, and not as coherent as I should be. So when we got up to the top of that, we stopped and like had a talk, and we were like, we actually implemented all of these like additional safety protocols that we normally don't do. Where we're like, we've just been climbing together a lot, you know, for several years now and thousands of pitches. We're like, we're pretty comfortable just on autopilot doing that. And we specifically said, like, hey, we're both going off of autopilot for these entire rappels. For every single rappel, we are going to look at each other's attachment points. You're not weighting anything until you're unweighting that, or you're not unweighting until you're unweighting that. And like everything's locked. You know, we did these, we tied knots, we saddlebagged ropes, like we removed, and we were like slower on the way down for sure because of that. But it was better than, you know, on a good day, we probably could have burned those rappels in like 20 minutes or something crazy where we just like, we have it so ironed out. And on this day, maybe we took like 35 or 40, but that was an intentional decision that we did because now we're in this really consequential terrain where we know mistakes are prone to happen, and we're super sleep deprived and we're tired. So we try to like inject a couple extra safety nets or like, you know, guardrails into these scenarios. But obviously when you're leading and stuff, you know, when you're going up, like we simul climb the first 11 pitches of Half Dome in like one block. And you know, there are, you're generally in a no fall terrain the entire time. If you fall at any point on that, you know, Mike's placing like one or two cams maybe per pitch. Some pitch he
Right.
doesn't place anything. So like we're climbing a lot slower, but how we mitigate that is like we did a bunch of laps beforehand. So we're so comfortable in that terrain that I'm not second guessing stuff. I get to a crux and I know that's like, oh, finger lock here and this foot goes out here and there's a good jam right ahead that I can rest on and like plug a cam to pull on. So you obviously can't remove that risk totally. We try to be really cognizant of like, hey, we're already doing high risk activities and now we're adding sleep deprivation and you know, supreme exhaustion to it and stuff. So we just try to be aware of that. Like I said earlier, like I don't want to shy away from that and act like it's not happening. that's not a good way to approach that, by being like, no, we're fine, nothing's going to happen. I know stuff can happen and we're trying to safeguard against that. But the reality is, if you want to do these, these big technical endurance days, like, you will have to take that risk at some point until we find a way to like mitigate that further. I just haven't really found a way to do that. If I could remove all the risk from the quad and do the whole thing in like with some fucking drone that flies behind me, and as soon as I fall, it catches my shirt and like I'm at no risk, I would be happy to do that. I don't need the risk to feel like I'm, doing more. It definitely exacerbates the kind of experience in a very like real way. But not necessarily in a good way. It's people get hurt, people die doing that. Like, I acknowledge that, which is why I've kind of been pretty vocal about, I don't want to make a career like speed climbing moving forward. I honestly don't know if I will speed climb at all moving forward. I'm sure we'll do a couple naiads and stuff, like that's great, but it just seems like it's disproportionately dangerous compared to the other stuff that I've been doing. And it's, we did the quad. Like, I'm good. I don't need to keep like taking that risk over and over and over for what? Like, let me go do something else that's like, that I'm attracted to and is really inspiring. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's generally how we approach it.
No, I think that's yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's such a good point of, hey, we don't ignore that this risk exists. We take more measures as, the fatigue levels rise. Yeah, I always think that's the trickiest part often with climbing, is that as you increase, like as you move upwards in the sport, I think that the tendency is like it becomes more risky. Like, that's almost how you have to keep upping it. And that always to me is like kind of an unfortunate part. It's the same in
Yeah.
like skiing and ski touring, etc. It's like, okay, how about the bigger lines, the bigger routes, like, they are naturally more risky. And so yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like you just go faster or something. It's like,
Yeah.
well, yeah,
Well, there's like
yeah.
there's both aspects of like, what can you physically do, which is like, that's one leading edge of the sport, right? Like 515D is like what you can physically do right now as a human, but then there's what will you do? And it's like, that's where a lot of that's the other leading edge of the sport, is like, what risks will
I
you
like
take?
that.
Like, that's unfortunately, like, those are the two, that's where it bifurcates, is like, what can you do and what will you do? And those are both the tip of the spear of like the leading edge of the sport. And unfortunately, one of those is a lot more dangerous than the other. And it's this like, it's almost this like cheat code of being like, well, I actually can't do that much, but I'll just choose to like hit override on my, manual safety meter in my head. And I will do this thing that's like maybe obscenely dangerous or risky, but it'll catapult me into the spotlight because now I've chosen to take these risks, and maybe I got away from it, or I got away with it, and now it's going to inspire somebody else to push that a little bit further. So it's like kind of a double-edged sword. I think there is a lot of value in I think boldness and alpinism and climbing and mountaineering and stuff. I think there's a culture of like, boldness will be this bedrock of the sport for forever, just because it's kind of built on this like idea of the hard man courage in the face of certain death in the mountains. But I do think it's a double-edged sword, because it's you like, we're going to hit a point of diminishing returns obviously at some point, which does happen. Somebody will take that one step too far and die, and then everybody will take a step back, and then the next generation, some young stud will come out and say, okay, I'll do it, and he'll get away with it, and then somebody else will leapfrog him, and then he'll die, and everybody will take a step back. So it's just kind of the unfortunate reality of these like really objectively risky kind of objectives that people are looking at. So, and I totally get it. I've contributed to that. I totally understand. Like, doing the quad, we have to take safety shortcuts to do that amount of climbing in a day. There's no world where you can't. So I know that I've contributed to this, and some young crusher is looking at that and he's saying, I can do 5 in a day because I'll take time off here and I'll take time off that, and I won't clip this anchor, and we'll simul climb all of this, and I won't place any gear on this pitch. So now I can do this wall an hour faster. So I have time for a 5th wall. And like, I know that's going to happen, and I don't want to propagate this like dangerous, it's not like a sexy thing. It's like, it's stressful and it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
It does have a place, but I think it needs to be approached super intentionally and cautiously, and just people aware what they're getting into.
No, I'm glad you said that. I think it is such a piece of the sport that I don't think is obvious and apparent in other sports. I mean, you could look at cycling as like doping is kind of that like edge.
Yeah.
Running, I think that's also doping is a part of it, pushing that limit. But yeah, it certainly seems less in your face as climbing and alpinism and all of that of like, yeah, too far is death,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
always the backstop. Like
Yeah.
forever. That's always the backstop is you will die if you're incorrect here. Which is like,
Yeah.
that sort of, uh, that sort of consequential result from an intentional decision does create this like this sense of, not, I don't want to say value, but like it does make this like a really meaningful sport to know that like I'm going to go test myself in the mountains and I know that if I'm wrong, I will die. Like I know that. So maybe I'm only going to do, the Whitney Trail, and like the chances of me dying are very low, but not zero. It happens every single year. Every single
Yep.
winter somebody dies on the Whitney Trail. So like there's something to be said about going into a scenario where you know that you're at risk, but you're going to test yourself to make the right decisions and come home safe. But I just think that it gets a little glamorized, I think, from a lot of social media stuff. And again, I know I've contributed to this too. I understand that. I just think it needs to be approached like cautiously in a really intentional way, not quite as flippantly as like, yeah, we're going to go, do these death defying things because we're crazy. It's like, no, do it because you prepared and you know that you're confident and like, you have, I just think the motives need to be like a little, they just need to be examined in like a way that should matter.
Absolutely. Yeah. Could not agree more. And I want to tie that into, and gosh, we're running out of time quickly,
So,
but hopefully we can just
yeah,
touch base on this briefly. Uh, what kind of caught my attention, just because this is something I think about very often in the outdoor industry, is making it in the sport, landing that contract that allows you to climb professionally, to do what you love all the time. And you were able to just do that with La Sportiva. You have a few other sponsors, so congrats on that. It's
yeah,
not easy, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But how do you grapple as you are headed into your first quote unquote season where you're really, like on a team being paid to do these things? How are you thinking about your objectives and what you want to accomplish now, having that component that's like, at the end of the day, I've said this so many times recently, um you want to be a good person, you want to be a strong part of the community as a sponsored athlete, but your results are the reason why you are a sponsored athlete. At the end of the day, you have to perform. That's literally part of your job. Like I have said this a lot, and talk to team managers, but like, how are you in this kind of space of climbing, etc., thinking and looking towards a season of being in that position?
yeah. Um,
It's a
it,
tough question.
yeah, just to be just bluntly, it does. It's not even a slight consideration for me.
Heck yeah. I mean, that's amazing. So you don't
I
feel like,
I think that I just have this natural inclination to want to push myself and kind of improve, as a just kind of as a standard when I wake up every day. And I really, if I did, if we did the triple, we did it. We had time left. Let's do the quad. That's an obvious progression for my partner and I. And I kind of have that in most climbing. Like if okay, I'm climbing 512 like very comfortably now. Let's work on 513 now. Like I don't think I mean, at the moment, I'm not struggling at all to stay motivated to like do these big objectives. I have an enormous whiteboard in my shed with probably 50 different things on it that I want to get done. I, I don't I don't know. I don't want this to sound like this isn't supposed to be self-aggrandizing in any way. I'm not trying to like
No.
boastful. I just think that I feel very compelled to like do these things that inspire me. Um, and they just happen like at the moment they happen to be on, you know, on or near the cutting edge of the sport. So I think that as long as I'm um, prioritizing the stuff that is really inspiring for me and that I that I want to get done, I guess the most right now. It just happens to also be the biggest things that are being done at the moment in these like very specific niches inside, you know, climbing and stuff like that. So, like we talked about earlier, this year is like this will be like the year of the traverses, and like the stuff that I'm looking at doing is are most of the biggest traverses in the entire world, and like or in at least in the United States. And um that I'm doing that whether I have all the
Yeah.
sponsors in the world or whether nobody gives a shit and my Instagram page is deleted tomorrow. I'm doing the exact same thing regardless. Like I'm gonna keep taking the same pictures. If Instagram got shut down tomorrow as an app, I'd be texting them to friends being like, look at this, how beautiful, this is amazing. You know, and like the social media stuff has been an incredible asset for me. To be I'm not delusional. I know I'm not a professional climber in the sense that like I don't climb 515 or 514 or 513. I totally acknowledge that. I've like I'm just trying to pursue what I'm really passionate about and what's kind of inspiring. And social media has been a big way to provide value, I guess, where maybe I'm not on the cutting edge of these like specific kinds of the sport where I don't climb that hard in the grand scheme of things, which is completely true. But I really like telling stories and I like sharing these experiences and stuff. So I don't know whether I have the support from these companies or not. I'm with all the free time that I have, whether that's all day because they're paying me to do this, or it's on the weekends because I need to go get a regular job. I'm going to keep doing the stuff that inspires me the most. I'm going to keep sharing it because it, I think it's really, I don't know, it's really gratifying. Like I get messages all the time from people being like, hey, we went out and we bought a van, you know, this week, or like we went out, we tried rock climbing, or we went hiking, or I've gotten hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those messages now at this point from that page. Um, of people that have been like inspired to go do this stuff just because I had a good day and I felt compelled to like share that experience as an opportunity that like, hey, you can also have this good day. I'm not saying look at me. I'm saying look at this. You can do this too. This is awesome. So whether the you know the brands want to support that or not, it's awesome that they did. I'm like extremely grateful that Sportiva signed me. And we just talked about this before. I got signed to a 2-year contract. Like on salary, which is just like this craziest thing in planet Earth. So like now we can really lean all into this and not stress about you know, how are we going to pay the mortgage and stuff? Because we also talked about this too. There's this funny like notion that if you're like rolling in the dough or you making a ton of money if you're like if you have Instagram followers. But like people leave comments all the time being like he's super rich, like he's got followers, he's getting paid. I'm like, who do you think is paying me? Like we're making no money here. We have like my wife works full time and she's been incredibly supportive. We get some money from the VA like coming in that's like, you know, stuff from the military, which is great. We donate a large portion of that to Crux every month because I feel like that's the least I can do when I'm like getting a paycheck. And then none of it's like a livable wage. If my wife wasn't like working and supporting this and like allowing me to like have this opportunity to push and try, this would have I couldn't even have gotten off the ground. We would never would have started. Like, you know, it's like it's almost embarrassing to say, but like she's enabled this whole thing. It's been an incredible opportunity. So now that these brands have like kind of backed us, and like Maxim and Koros and Sportiva and Black Diamond has been like a huge gear support and stuff. That's the only reason I'm here is that they've like taken a chance, and it means a lot that they've looked at me and said like, maybe you're not doing, you know, you're not climbing 516 today, but we think that you're going to be a good investment enough that we're going to partner with you. Like we're looking at the trajectory and hopefully you're going to continue this like growth in years to come. And that's kind of like been my pitch the whole time is like, hey, like, you know, I'm not making headlines quite yet before the quad, but like, look at this trajectory. And I think if you guys get in now and support me, you know, I'd love to work together in 5 years when we are at the point where we're like, hey, this is, you know, this is like the biggest thing that happened this year is like, you know, Tanner and his partner doing this new big thing. And it's like an exciting thought, but it doesn't happen in a vacuum. You like need that support.
I mean, gosh, like, couldn't have, not that like there's a right answer, but like you would be doing it anyway. Like you
Yeah,
would
of
be
course.
doing all of this anyway, whether or not
That's the only reason
Sportiva
that
decides to.
that's the only way you're
Totally
gonna.
that, but that's not the case for everyone. So,
Yeah, I mean,
like
dude,
that's yeah,
I'm not waking up at 4:30 and going walking on a dumbass treadmill for 2 hours. I'm not. I'm not going to go do these like horrific, 20-hour mountain days where it's like -10 out. Like that's fucking hard. It's hard work. You have to love that. You're not going to do anything. I'm sorry, just bluntly, you're not going to do anything remarkable unless you love this sport because the amount of time and
totally.
effort and energy that is required for you to like put in and sacrifice to do anything worth talking about is enormous. And there's not a paycheck that will motivate you to do this if you don't really love it. It's just not possible. There's no way. The support is incredible. It allows me to focus more fully on this stuff that I love, but like it's not going to change anything. It doesn't. I'm not. I'm posting the same pictures I did today that I did when I started climbing 5 years ago or whatever. Whether I got 2 likes on it or 1,000 likes on it, I don't care. I just want to share stuff that like inspires me and that I want to share with people and be like, look at this. This is beautiful. This is awesome. You can do this too. So yeah, it's cool.
That's super cool. Yeah, it no, it's just it's funny. I always joke like as I've kind of moved through the sport, race bonuses get bigger and stuff. I'm like, man, my hourly rate is still shit. Like if you look at all the hours, like my hourly rate's really bad. So
I totally hear you. It's definitely not I mean it's worth it, if it enables me to keep going out and like it's
totally.
such like a privilege and a blessing to be able to wake up every day and just be like, what am I going to do today to be able to perform better at my next objective, whatever that is. Like, and like if that's going and doing 4 hours of like uphill touring with weight, or like if I need to go for, if I need to go to the gym and do like 100 pitches or something, like I love that. That's awesome. And then I come home and I'm like totally wrecked. I'm like, what an awesome day. Like I did something that's going to further me doing better at something that I really care about. Cause like I really care about these like big days and objectives. And like they mean a lot to me. And it's just like such a privilege to be able to put in that time. It's been, I mean, granted, it's been a fucking ton of work. And like, that it is a
Yeah.
lot of
Oh
work.
yeah.
Like, I mean, probably hundreds of emails at this point, like of outreach, most of which just get completely ignored, and like a million no's from a million people. And like, definitely like a lot of like, tough, like, you get your hopes up for like certain brands or support or sponsorships, and then like they don't come through, and like there's like some parts where you're like, what the fuck are we doing, man? Like this is not working. This is not like I had that recently after we I was I got invited to come on the Black Diamond ambassador team, which I was super excited about. And then when just I have nothing bad to say about Black Diamond at all. But when the contract came out, it wasn't a good fit. It wasn't a good fit
Yeah.
for us to like, sign that officially. And man, it like that felt like this pinnacle of like, oh, if I'm a Black Diamond supported athlete, like there's nowhere higher to go. I just rise within Black Diamond, but like there's nowhere to go laterally. Like this is it. This is the top of like the climbing world. And it was like when I got the offer, like officially, my wife we had this big celebration dinner, and it was just like it just felt like everything had like worked, and we're like, holy crap, we did this. But it was always like, let's wait to see the contract. And then the contract came out, and it was like, fuck, man. Like immediately we read it, and we're like, this isn't gonna work. And so we ended up backing out. And like now I'm still working with them. I'm gonna keep working with them in like a less formal sense. They're still incredibly supportive. They've done probably more than any brand up to this point, in terms of like the gear support and everything. But yeah, that was like such a low point when that fell through. And I was like, what now? Like, where do you go? Like, what do I even do now? Like, I'm not making money doing this. I have to go get a regular job. And like, I'm not complaining. That's just the reality. Like, if we're going to have kids, I need to support
Yeah.
my family.
Yeah.
Been the thought all along is like, as soon as we have kids, as soon as my wife gets pregnant, if I'm not making a sustainable income with this, everything stops immediately. I go get a job, which is the way it should be. I want to support my family. I don't want my wife to work while she's pregnant, we have a newborn. Like, so I was like, I've had this big digital bomb timer in the back of my head, like counting down to like, when we're having kids, and like, I have this much time to make this work. And if I don't make it work by then, that's it. I'm done. It didn't, and I tried, it didn't work. I failed, gave it my best. Let's go back to State Farm, whatever. Like, I don't know. So
Maybe not
it's
State Farm, but yeah.
yeah, I know. But it was
It's
like really, really special that Sportiva kind of came in at the golden hour, and like right after the last one kind of fell through, and they came in, and yeah, it just feels really cool that they like see something in me that's worth investing in. And yeah, I hope I can earn my spot on the team this year. I'm stoked.
I'm sure you can, but oh man, like, yeah, I have had that heartbreak so many times, and you're like, this is it, this is making it, and
Yeah.
then you realize that like making it is not what you thought it was. You'll
Yeah.
probably, with your personality, as I'm guessing we're pretty similar, will actually never really feel like you make it, even though on paper, like my husband will be like, you're making it. I'm like, no, I'm not. I could get X, Y, and Z. I could rise in this way. I could do this. And it, like, you're never really going to feel that. But also, like, gosh, yeah, I've had my heart broken so many times, and it honestly is probably the most, it feels so personal, where you're like, you try to be like, it's just a business, it's okay, but like,
Yeah, it
you
is
are
personal.
literally saying it is personal because it's you. You're like,
Yeah.
it's not like, hey, XY. It's like, no, it's literally
Yeah.
you that
It's like
feels like
a
it's being
brand.
rejected.
Yeah. I say that. And like, it's like a brand looking at me and going, no, not you.
Yeah,
I,
too
it
skinny,
feels
too small. Yeah, you're like, what? Yeah,
totally, it feels personal. Yeah. It's like, oh man, that's like kind of brutal to hear. And after like, dozens and dozens and dozens of those, you're like, is it me?
I suck. Yeah,
Yeah. I really struggle with I have this like really, really constantly just like brutally negative inner monologue that's like, I'm trying to work on. And I think part of it's been really beneficial for like, it's a great motivator, honestly.
oh yeah,
The incessant shit talking to yourself is like actually a great way to get a lot done. But it's actually pretty brutal too. So like right after we signed with Sportiva, I like said something to my wife where I was like, yeah, I mean, they only signed me because I have like Instagram followers. So, and she was like, shut the fuck up. Like, you always do this. You always do this. And I'm like, well, I'm like not even that good of a climber. And they care about that and like not athletes. And she's like, you are out of your mind. Like, this is insane. And like, but
yeah,
I do that every single time where I like immediately try to like demean or like, take value out of these accomplishments or status or value or whatever. And I'm trying to work on that a little more, but yeah, it's something I'm trying to figure out still. It's kind of been a tough lesson to learn.
yeah. Well, I can attest to someone who has been, gosh, doing it like probably 8 years, like 7 or 8 years, where I've been like, okay, like maybe I can start reaching out, etc. Um, yeah, you'll probably still keep feeling that way. Also, when you're like, oh, I'm not really like, cut like at the top of climbing, etc. Well, I'm gonna call bullshit. You're a different kind of climber, but you are the top of that type of climbing. I think
Yeah.
it's like in the ultra world saying like, well, I'm not the best 50K in the world, but I'm really good at 100 miles or whatever. Like, there
Oh, that's
is a
true.
lot of, yeah. So
Yeah.
you are very like at the top, cutting edge of your area of climbing.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't touch a fast 50K that was really going after it. Like, that's just not my strength. But 100 miler, like, yeah, let's go. So just, yeah,
Right.
different fields of the same sport, which I think it's so cool that we're at the point in sponsorship where that differentiation has value. Like,
Yeah.
it's not just one. It's like there's a
Yeah.
range.
That's actually a good point. I haven't really, for some reason, right? As soon as you like compare that to running and the different disciplines between short distance and long distance and ultra distance and stuff, that like immediately was a palatable way for me to see that like, oh, you're right. Actually, that's like, I don't need to run the 100-yard dash the fastest and also be the fastest 100-miler. That's not possible. Like,
It's not
so
possible. Yeah.
yeah,
Because
that's true.
you have an endurance piece that someone who's at the, shooting for that 515D, 516, that's just not on their radar. Like, that's
Yeah.
not going to help them be. Whereas you're trying to do something that's just requires a much different load and capacity.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. Yeah, I know. I think I have a good propensity to suffer positively, and I think that it's kind of why I've like, I mean, obviously you do too. Like that's like why we're, kind of in these like masochistic ultra enduro things, right? Because you get to really like get to know yourself pretty well, and it's cool. It's a cool experience.
It is. Um, awesome. Yeah, gosh, we got to have another podcast because I feel like we could keep chatting about all
Keep
of these pieces. Also, you have one of the best Instagram handles. I like Big Buttress. I laugh every time I see it. It's
yeah,
great.
Han
Um,
hated that. Han hated that so much. We actually, I don't know if you know, we started out as like just this adventure page of like, we like bought our first van and we started climbing, and just like everybody else, we're just gonna share like what we have going on and stuff. And like I just kind of I had this like big breakthrough year that like took off, and a lot of the stuff I was doing was like getting some notoriety, and the page just like slowly kind of morphed into mine. But I that wasn't our original page name, and I remember we were driving in the car, and I was like, I've got the best idea, and I pitched that, and she was like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. She thought it was so dumb, like so against it, and I was like, I got a good feeling about this, and I turned it over, and we never looked back. I,
I love
I
it. I was wondering if she was like pro or against it because I could see both.
She did not like it, and it's really funny now. We're at a point where we get recognized like quite a lot especially climbing places or gyms or like anywhere like that, and that's like how everybody they're like, hey, you're Big Buttress. And I'm like, yeah, I know, it's kind of funny, but yeah, I love it.
Oh, that's awesome. One last fun question. What's your go-to, like as you're cramming food in in between climbs, what's your go-to for that fuel?
Oh, beef. Yeah, I'm not very creative.
Beef.
I'm
Okay.
like, yeah, I've been on. I know. I'm like, we. I've been on a primarily carnivore diet. We could do a whole podcast about this. Somewhere a nutritionist is listening to this, like ripping their eyeballs out of their head. I eat I eat one meal a day, almost every single day. I don't eat until at least 5 p.m. every day, like no matter what. And then at 5 p.m. I'll eat like 2 pounds of beef in a sitting, and then I'll have another dinner generally at like 7 p.m. or something like that. But I have like a 2 hour window that I just cram like thousands and thousands of calories in. So on our triple, actually, we got a bunch of tri-tip, and
Oh my gosh.
our old school climbing buddy John Bernhard was out. He was grilling tri-tip at 3 o'clock in the morning at Elcat picnic area. So I'll send you a picture when we get off this. But when we got off the El Cap, we went running down the East Ledges, and he's got this barbecue cookout set up at 3:45 at El Cap picnic area, like it's a summer day, but it's like 20 degrees in the middle of the night, and he's out there flipping tri-tips like, "Hey, breakfast is ready." And we just started ripping steaks down. It was so good. I don't know. I feel like that helps me like recover the best. I'm also a sucker for like some milk duds. If we're getting the sweets down, milk duds is like my go-to. So
Nice.
yeah,
Just got to get some cow component, the milk, the tri-tip.
exactly.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Oh, fun. Sweet. Well, Tanner, people can find you at I Like Big Buttress. Is there any other pieces you want to plug or places?
No, no. Yeah. I just want to plug Crux Wilderness Therapy, the nonprofit.
Yes,
Uh,
please.
yeah, I just think it's like the coolest program in the world. And just like a 30-second like brief, synopsis. We provide outdoor climbing clinics every single weekend around Southern California, guided by AMGA guides. They're completely free for all veterans, service members, and their families. So if you want to learn how to climb, or like you want to go climb El Cap one day, or like whatever you want, come out to our clinics. Our guides are all veterans, and we're there to facilitate literally whatever you want. We're just providing free AMGA guides to like break down all the barriers to entry. So if you have been climbing and you want to learn how to climb trad or multi-pitch or big wall or whatever, we can do whatever you want. It's just this really cool resource. We're a wilderness therapy resource, and if you just want to like get outside and enjoy out, the blue skies and sun, and like not think about all your problems for a day. Come out and climb and like get away from reality. It doesn't matter. But our Instagram page is Crux Wilderness, and then cruxwilderness.org. It's like the coolest program in the world. It's awesome. So yeah,
Wow.
get on it.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, Tanner, thanks for coming on. We'll have to bring you back on for sure, maybe to talk about some meets. And yeah, good luck. I hope that yeah, we cross paths sooner
Yeah,
rather than
really
later.
will. Yeah,
Awesome.
awesome. Well, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on, and thank you for listening to the Uphill Athlete podcast. If you can rate, review, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, helps us get in front of more people. Thank you for listening. It's not just one, but a community. We are Uphill Athlete.